There is an age that appears upon the face, and there is another age that silently enters the heart. The first is written by time, but the second is written by forgetfulness. A person may be young in years, yet already exhausted by resentment, disappointment, comparison and fear, while another may carry the marks of many decades and still possess a heart that receives each morning as a new mercy from Allah. The secret is not found in escaping time, because everybody travels toward its appointed end. The secret is found in remembering the one who is untouched by time. When the heart remembers Allah, it does not become trapped inside what has passed, nor does it collapse beneath what may come. It returns to the eternal source of its life, and in that return, something within it is renewed. The heart has an age the body cannot measure. The first lesson is that the age of the heart cannot be measured by the number of years a person has lived. The body follows a visible journey. Strength rises, reaches its height, and slowly changes. The hair may become white, the movement may become slower, and the face may begin to carry the history of laughter, hardship, patience, and grief. These changes are not failures, they are signs that the body has fulfilled another portion of its trust. The heart, however, follows a different law. A heart can become old before the body. It becomes old when it no longer expects goodness from Allah, when it can no longer forgive, when it sees every new person through the wounds caused by someone from the past, and when it approaches every opportunity with the certainty that disappointment will return. Such a heart may still beat strongly, but inwardly it has become tired of receiving life. There are people who wake each morning already carrying yesterday. Their eyes open, but their inner world remains trapped in an old conversation, an old betrayal, an old regret, or a door that closed many years ago. Time moves around them, but their heart remains seated beside what has gone. From a contemplative Sufi perspective, this is one meaning of inner aging. The heart loses its ability to receive the present because it is imprisoned by the forms of the past. The wisdom associated with Ibn Arabi often invites us to see the heart as more than a place of emotion. The heart is also a place of recognition. It turns, reflects, receives, and changes. When it is clear, it can recognize signs of Allah's mercy in ordinary moments. When it is covered, even great blessings may pass before it without being seen. Consider a mirror placed in a room. The mirror does not create the light, but when it is clean, it receives and reflects what is before it. If dust gathers upon it, the light has not disappeared. The mirror has simply lost the ability to show it clearly. The heart is similar. Allah's mercy does not cease because you feel distant. His generosity does not become smaller because you have become tired. The signs of His wisdom do not vanish because you do not presently understand your circumstances. Yet the heart may become covered by grief, pride, constant distraction, unprocessed pain, and the exhausting effort to control what was never placed under human control. Dhikr begins to remove that dust. Remembrance does not reverse the physical process of aging, nor does faith require us to deny the natural changes of the body. The heart that remembers Allah does not pretend that time has stopped. Instead, it learns how to travel through time without becoming spiritually trapped inside it. This is why some elderly people possess a tenderness that feels younger than the confidence of youth. Their bodies have carried loss, but their hearts have continued returning to Allah. They have buried loved ones, watched plans change, endured weakness, and witnessed the temporary nature of worldly things. Yet they have not allowed those experiences to turn them against life. Their youth is not in their appearance. It is in their capacity to remain receptive to mercy. A spiritually young heart is still capable of wonder. It can still say, "Perhaps Allah is opening something I cannot yet see." It can still repent without believing that change is impossible. It can still learn without being humiliated by not knowing. It can still love without demanding ownership. It can still hope without requiring proof in advance. This kind of youth is not childish. It is not innocence without wisdom. It is wisdom that has passed through pain without becoming poisoned by it. The body may grow weaker, yet the heart can become more spacious. The eyes may lose some of their sharpness, yet spiritual vision can become clearer. The world may offer fewer illusions, yet the soul can become more alive because it has finally understood that nothing created was meant to replace the Creator. Ask yourself gently, how old does your heart feel? Not your body, not your face, not the number written on your documents. How old is the part of you that receives life? Does it still believe repentance can open a new beginning? Does it still notice beauty? Does it still soften when the Qur'an is recited? Does it still feel gratitude for small mercies? Can it still look at another person's blessing without concluding that its own provision has been forgotten? These questions reveal an age no mirror can show. The heart that remembers Allah remains young because remembrance keeps it connected to the one from whom every moment receives its existence. Yet remembrance is often misunderstood. Many people move their tongues while their inner world remains somewhere else. To understand why Dhikr renews the heart, we must look more deeply at what remembrance truly means. Dhikr is the return of the heart to its source. The second lesson is that Dhikr is not merely the repetition of sacred words. It is the return of the scattered heart to the one it was created to know. The tongue may pronounce the name of Allah, while the mind is counting problems, comparing lives, remembering injuries, or imagining the future. The words are still worthy, and the habit should not be abandoned, but the deeper fruit of remembrance begins when the heart slowly learns to accompany the tongue. To remember Allah is to remember reality. It is to remember that you are created, not self-created. You are sustained, not independent. You are guided, forgiven, tested, protected, and carried through moments you could never have crossed through your own strength alone. Dhikr returns the human being to this truth. Forgetfulness makes the ego feel enormous. It convinces you that everything depends upon you, that every problem must be solved by your mind, that every relationship must be preserved by your effort, and that every future danger must be predicted before you can rest. Remembrance restores proportion. It reminds you that you have responsibilities, but you are not the lord of outcomes. You must act sincerely, yet the result belongs to Allah. You must protect what has been entrusted to you, yet you do not possess anything independently. You must plan, but your plan exists within a wisdom far greater than your own. When this understanding enters the heart, an old burden begins to loosen. This is why sincere dhikr can make the heart feel spacious, even when circumstances have not changed. The problem may still exist. The answer may still be delayed. The person may not have apologized. The door may remain closed, yet the heart is no longer carrying the matter alone. In the language of inward wisdom, remembrance is like bringing a cup back beneath a flowing spring. The cup had not been destroyed. It had simply moved away from the water. When it returns, it receives it again. The heart grows old when it lives too long away from its source. It becomes dry from constant exposure to noise. It becomes heavy from carrying identities that were never meant to define it. It becomes tiring from trying to extract permanent peace from temporary things. It becomes suspicious because created love has disappointed it. It becomes restless because achievement cannot answer the questions of the soul. Then dhikr begins, quietly, perhaps without emotion, perhaps with a distracted mind that must be returned again and again. The heart says, Allah, and beneath that sacred name is a deeper confession. You are here even when I feel lost. You know even when I do not understand. You remain even when everything around me changes. This is renewal, not always a sudden feeling, but a steady reorientation. A traveler can become exhausted simply by walking in the wrong direction. The distance may not be great, yet every step increases the confusion. When the traveler turns toward the destination, the road may still be long, but the movement itself begins to carry hope. Dhikr is that turning. It does not require you to escape ordinary life. You can remember Allah while working, caring for family, walking, waiting, resting, or moving through difficult conversations. The goal is not to abandon the world, but to stop allowing the world to occupy the center that belongs to Allah. The heart remains young when it continues returning. Even after sin, it returns. Even after distraction, it returns. Even after a season of spiritual dryness, it returns. Even after disappointment, it returns. The person who believes they must become perfect before remembering Allah has misunderstood mercy. You do not wash yourself before approaching the water. You approach the water because you need to be washed. Remembrance is not a reward for those who have already purified themselves. It is one of the means through which purification begins. You may not feel transformed every time you engage in dhikr. Do not measure every act of worship by immediate emotion. A seed does not break the earth the moment it is planted, yet something has already begun beneath the surface. Continue. Say the words with sincerity, even when the heart feels slow. Reflect upon their meaning. Let your breathing become calmer, but do not turn remembrance into merely a relaxation technique. Its purpose is greater than temporary calm. Its purpose is to return you to Allah. When the heart remembers its source, it becomes less afraid of change. It knows that forms pass, while the one who gives them meaning remains. Yet something constantly pulls the heart away from this remembrance. And that force is not always open rebellion. More often, it is ordinary forgetfulness. Forgetfulness is what makes the soul feel old. The third lesson takes us deeper. The heart does not become spiritually old because it has lived too much, but because it has forgotten too deeply. In Islamic language, forgetfulness is not simply failing to recall information. It can mean living as though Allah is distant, as though the world is permanent, as though death belongs only to others, and as though the soul can be satisfied by accumulation, recognition, or control. This forgetfulness enters quietly. You become busy and worship is delayed. You become hurt and resentment becomes your companion. You become successful and gratitude slowly becomes self-congratulation. You become afraid and precautions turn into obsession. You become disappointed and caution becomes a refusal to trust anyone again. Nothing appears dramatic at first, yet over time, the heart loses flexibility. It no longer responds to reminders easily. It has heard the words before, recited the verses before, and listened to the advice before, but familiarity has formed a veil. This is one of the saddest forms of aging, when sacred truth no longer feels new because the heart believes it already possesses what it has never fully lived. A young heart does not mean an uninformed heart. It means a heart that remains teachable. It can hear a familiar verse and ask, "What does Allah require from me through this today?" It can repeat a known dhikr and feel that it is returning from a different distance. It can admit that knowledge has not yet become character. Forgetfulness makes the world seem larger than it is. A temporary rejection begins to feel like a final judgment. A delayed answer feels like permanent abandonment. A mistake becomes an identity. Another person's opinion becomes a verdict upon your worth. Remembrance breaks this illusion. It reminds you that the entire worldly life is passing, including the pain you currently believe will never change. It reminds you that people see fragments, while Allah knows the whole. It reminds you that a closed door is not greater than divine wisdom, and that a season of confusion does not erase every mercy that came before it. This does not mean pain should be minimized. Islam does not ask the wounded person to pretend they are not wounded. The heart remains young, not by denying grief, but by refusing to make grief its final understanding of Allah. You are permitted to mourn. You are permitted to feel tired. You are permitted to seek support. But do not allow the wound to become the only window through which you look at existence. Forgetfulness narrows vision. Remembrance widens it again. The spiritually aging heart says, "This is all my life will ever be." The remembering heart says, "This is one chapter within a life whose meaning is known fully only to Allah." The aging heart says, I have failed too many times to change. The remembering heart says, the door of repentance is still open while I am alive. The aging heart says, people have disappointed me, so love itself is unsafe. The remembering heart says, created love has limits, but the mercy of Allah is not measured by human weakness. Every sincere return restores movement to the heart. Think of water that remains trapped for too long. Without flow, it becomes stagnant. The heart also requires movement, but not merely movement through places, experiences, and relationships. It needs movement from heedlessness toward awareness, from pride toward humility, from resentment toward release, and from fear toward trust. This is the journey of remembrance. Once forgetfulness is understood, another truth becomes clear. Much of what makes the heart feel old is the weight of control. The heart becomes exhausted trying to hold together a world that was never placed in its hands. The next lesson reveals why surrender is not defeat, but a form of spiritual youth. Surrender removes the weight that ages the heart. The fourth lesson is that surrender keeps the heart young, because it releases the soul from the impossible task of controlling everything it loves. There is a tiredness that comes from work, responsibility, illness, and long days. Rest may ease that tiredness, yet there is another tiredness that sleep cannot remove because it is created by resistance. It comes from arguing inwardly with what has already happened, trying to force people to become what they have shown no willingness to become, demanding certainty from the future, and believing that peace can begin only after life obeys your plan. This is the tiredness of control. It ages the heart because control requires constant vigilance. The person who must control every outcome can never fully rest. Even in moments of joy, part of them is already preparing for loss. Even when someone loves them, they search for signs that love is changing. Even when a prayer is answered, they fear the answer may soon be taken away. The heart begins to live like a guard who is never permitted to sleep. Surrender does not mean becoming careless. It does not mean refusing to plan, abandoning your duties, or remaining in harmful situations. True surrender is not passivity. It is the correct placement of effort. You act where action is required, but you stop claiming authority over what belongs to Allah. You speak with honesty, but you do not imagine that your words can control another person's heart. You work with discipline, but you do not believe your effort alone creates provision. You care for your health, but you know that life and death remain within divine decree. You love people sincerely, but you do not demand that they become immortal so that you never have to grieve. This balance is difficult because the ego prefers two extremes. It either wants complete control or complete withdrawal. If it cannot guarantee success, it may refuse to try. If it cannot ensure that love will never hurt, it may refuse to love. If it cannot understand the wisdom of a trial, it may stop trusting Allah. Surrender chooses another path. It says, I will fulfill my responsibility, and I will leave the unseen outcome with the one whose knowledge contains what mine cannot. This is not a weakness. It is aligned with reality. The contemplative wisdom associated with Ibn Arabi often turns our attention toward the difference between the forms of things and the reality that gives those forms their meaning. A relationship is a form, a career is a form, a home, reputation, achievement, physical strength, and stage of life are all forms. They may be beautiful, valuable, and worthy of gratitude, but none of them are permanent. The heart grows old when it demands permanence from a form that was created to change. It says, this person must always remain exactly as they are. This chapter must never end. My body must never weaken. My children must always need me in the same way. My position must never change. My life must continue matching the image I formed many years ago. When reality moves, the heart resists. The more tightly it holds, the more every change feels like violence. Surrender teaches the heart to receive without possessing. You may love deeply while remembering that the person you love belongs to Allah before they belong in your life. You may enjoy success while remembering that success is a trust, not proof of superiority. You may care for youth and health without treating physical decline as spiritual humiliation. The heart remains young because it continues moving with divine wisdom rather than hardening around one preferred form. Consider a tree through the changing seasons. Its leaves appear, mature, change color, and fall. If the tree believed that life existed only in the leaves, autumn would appear to be death, yet something deeper remains, hidden beneath the visible change, waiting for another season. Human beings often confuse leaves with life. We think the loss of one form means the loss of all meaning. A relationship ends, and we say love has ended. A plan fails, and we say the future has ended. Strength decreases, and we say usefulness has ended. A role changes, and we say identity has ended. Surrender allows the heart to discover the root beneath the leaves. Allah may change the form through which you receive mercy without withdrawing mercy itself. He may close one path while teaching you to recognize another. He may remove a familiar dependence so that the heart becomes aware of a deeper dependence upon Him. This does not make separation painless. The heart that remembers Allah still grieves. The Prophet's path itself teaches that grief and faith can occupy the same human heart. Surrender does not erase emotion. It prevents emotion from becoming rebellion against reality. There is a difference between saying, "This hurts," and saying, "This should never have been allowed by Allah." The first is honest grief. The second may become an inward accusation built upon the assumption that our limited sight can judge the whole decree. You have spent years resisting one event. A betrayal, illness, missed opportunity, family conflict, or unexpected change altered the direction of your life. You accepted it outwardly because you had no choice, but inwardly, you have continued arguing with it. Part of your heart remains at the door of the past, demanding another ending. This is exhausting. Surrender begins when you stop asking the past to become different and begin asking Allah to show you how to live faithfully from where you are. You may never fully understand why something happened. Not every mystery is opened in this life. Spiritual maturity is not the ability to explain every decree. Sometimes it is the ability to remain with Allah, even when explanation does not arrive. A heart kept young by remembrance says, "I do not understand, but I refuse to let what I do not understand make me forget what I know of Allah's mercy, wisdom, and justice." This sentence is not easily lived. It may require repetition through tears. It may need to be rediscovered every morning. Surrender is rarely a single event. It is often a daily release. You release the need to be understood by everyone. You release the expectation that every sincere act will be appreciated. You release the demand that people repay loyalty with loyalty. You release the belief that growing older means becoming less valuable. You release the image of the life you thought you must have in order to be at peace. Each release gives the heart more space to remember Allah. The ego fears this release because it imagines that surrender will make the person empty. Yet the opposite occurs. What is emptied of control becomes available for trust. What is emptied of resentment becomes available for mercy. What is emptied of constant self-protection becomes available for wise love. In the inward journey, emptiness is not always absent. Sometimes it is preparation. A room filled with broken furniture cannot receive what is new. A cup already full cannot receive fresh water. A heart crowded with old demands has little space for the present mercy of Allah. Surrender clears the room. It does not destroy your personality, erase your hopes, or make you indifferent. It purifies desire. You can still ask Allah for healing, companionship, provision, guidance, and relief. But the prayer changes from "My peace depends upon receiving this exact outcome" to "I ask you for what I desire." while trusting you with what I cannot see. That prayer carries youth because it remains open. The old heart says, only one answer can save me. The remembering heart says, Allah may answer through a door I have not yet imagined. The old heart believes that its understanding contains the boundaries of possibility. The remembering heart knows that divine wisdom is not limited by what the human mind can presently conceive. There are also attachments that appear spiritual, but are forms of control. A person may become attached to a certain emotional state in worship. They remember a period when prayer felt easy, tears came quickly, and closeness to Allah seemed almost tangible. When that state changes, they believe they have been abandoned. Yet spiritual life has seasons. Sometimes sweetness is given. Sometimes dryness teaches sincerity. Sometimes the heart is carried by emotion, and sometimes it must continue through disciplined faithfulness without emotional reward. If you worship only when worship feels beautiful, you may be attached to the feeling more than the one being worshipped. Surrender means continuing to remember Allah through changing states. You do not make a god of spiritual emotion. You do not assume that a dry heart is a rejected heart. You continue polishing the mirror. The hidden mercy of spiritual dryness is that it reveals whether you are seeking Allah or seeking the pleasure of feeling close to Allah. When the pleasure disappears, sincere devotion remains and says, even without sweetness, you are still worthy of remembrance. This is a heart becoming young through truth. Surrender also changes how you relate to aging itself. Much of the fear of aging is not about the number of years. It is about loss of control. The body changes without asking permission. Other people begin making decisions differently. Roles shift. Children grow. Society may give less attention. The future becomes shorter in visible terms. The ego experiences this as a threat because it builds identity upon influence, appearance, strength, or usefulness. The remembering heart discovers another identity, servant of Allah. That identity does not expire. You may no longer perform the same tasks, but sincerity remains possible. You may possess less physical strength, but remembrance can deepen. You may become dependent upon others in ways you did not expect, but even dependence can become a school of humility. Human dignity does not disappear with physical change. The body may require care, but the soul remains addressed by Allah. The person who understands surrender can grow older without becoming inwardly smaller. They do not spend every day fighting the fact that life has moved. They ask, what form of worship belongs to this season? In youth, perhaps worship included physical effort and outward achievement. In later years, perhaps it includes patience, wise counsel, gratitude, gentleness, and preparing the heart to meet Allah. No sincere season is useless. Surrender keeps the heart young because it refuses to live entirely in a season that has ended. It receives the present as the current place of obedience. Yet surrender is not learned in comfort alone. It is usually deepened through trial. And this raises a difficult question. Why do some people emerge from suffering with softer hearts, while others emerge hardened, suspicious, and spiritually old? The answer begins with how pain is carried. Trials can break the shell without killing the light. The fifth lesson reveals that trials do not automatically age the heart. What ages the heart is pain that is carried without meaning, without truthful expression, without support, and without remembrance of Allah. Two people may pass through a similar hardship and emerge inwardly different. One becomes more compassionate because suffering has taught them how deeply human beings need mercy. The other becomes cruel because they decide that tenderness is dangerous. One grows closer to Allah because the trial reveals the limits of worldly dependence. The other turns away because they interpret pain as proof of divine rejection. The event alone does not explain the result. The heart's relationship with the event matters. This should not be used to blame people who are struggling. Pain affects the mind, body, emotions, and capacity to trust. Some wounds require professional care, patient support, and long periods of healing. Spiritual language should never be used to shame a person for not recovering quickly. Yet even within this complexity, a profound truth remains. A wound can become either a wall or a doorway. A wall says, "Because I was hurt, I will never open it again." A doorway says, "Because I was hurt, I now understand my need for Allah, wisdom, boundaries, and compassion more deeply." The heart that remembers Allah is not protected from every wound. It is protected from allowing the wound to become its final identity. Perhaps you have lived through something that changed your inner age. Before it happened, you trusted easily, laughed freely, and looked toward the future with expectation. Afterward, something in you became watchful. You began reading danger into silence. You questioned kindness. You prepared for abandonment. You no longer entered relationships as a complete person offering love, but as a frightened person asking others to prove repeatedly that they would not leave. This is not a moral failure. It is often the nervous system and heart trying to prevent another injury. Yet what begins as protection can eventually become imprisonment. A door locked during danger may save a life. A door that remains locked forever prevents life from entering. The heart requires discernment. Remembrance helps you distinguish between wise protection and fear-based closure. Wise protection says, "I have learned from what happened, and I will act with clearer boundaries." Fear-based closure says, "Because one person harmed me, no person can be trusted." Wise protection says, "I will not ignore warning signs again." Fear-based closure says, "Every imperfect action is a warning sign." Wise protection says, "I will seek help and move slowly." Fear-based closure says, "I must control every detail to guarantee that I will never suffer." The heart stays young when it learns without becoming frozen. In a contemplative reading inspired by Ibn Arabi, hardship can strip away false claims of independence. Before the trial, a person may say they trust Allah, yet their peace rests almost entirely upon health, approval, wealth, or one beloved relationship. When the form changes, the hidden attachment is revealed. This revelation can feel like destruction, because the ego does not easily surrender what it has made central. Yet the collapse of a false center can become the beginning of true orientation. Suppose a person builds their identity upon being needed. They serve everyone, solve every problem, and become the one whom others call in difficulty. Outwardly, this may appear generous, but inwardly, part of their worth may depend upon dependence from others. Then life changes. Children grow, responsibilities shift, or illness limits what they can do. The person feels useless, not because they have lost dignity, but because their heart has quietly equated usefulness with value. The trial reveals the equation. Remembrance corrects it. You are not valuable only when people need you. Your worth as a servant of Allah is not created by human dependence. Service is beautiful, but it should flow from devotion, not from the fear that without service you will disappear. This realization can renew the heart in later life. Instead of desperately trying to maintain an old role, the person discovers new forms of presence. They listen, they pray for others, they offer wisdom without controlling. They receive care with humility. They allow love to exist without always earning it. This is spiritual youth, born from surrender. Trials also expose the voices hidden inside the heart. When everything is easy, a person may not know what they truly believe. Under pressure, old fears rise. You may discover that beneath your worship was a fear that Allah would love you only if you performed perfectly. You may discover that beneath your patience was resentment waiting for an excuse. You may discover that beneath your generosity was an expectation of appreciation. This exposure is painful but merciful. What remains hidden cannot be purified consciously. The heart that remembers Allah learns to bring what is revealed into prayer rather than hiding behind spiritual appearances. It says, "O Allah, This trial has shown me my fear of being forgotten. It has shown me how much I depend upon people's approval. It has shown me that I speak of trust, but panic when my plan changes. It has shown me that I forgive with my words, while keeping the wound alive through repeated remembrance. Such honesty is not disrespectful. It is the beginning of sincerity. Allah already knows what is in the heart. Confession in prayer is not giving Him information. It is allowing yourself to stand before Him without disguise. The ego becomes old through performance. It spends years maintaining an image. The soul remains young through truth. When you can say, "I am hurt," without turning pain into a weapon, the heart becomes honest. When you can say, "I am jealous," without defending jealousy, the heart becomes teachable. When you can say, "I am afraid," without treating fear as prophecy, the heart becomes free to seek refuge. When you can say, "I was wrong," without collapsing into self-hatred, the heart becomes capable of repentance. Trials also teach the difference between softness and weakness. Some people become hard because they believe softness causes their pain. Yet often it was not softness, but a lack of boundaries, discernment, or self-respect. The solution is not to destroy tenderness. It is to join tenderness with wisdom. The Prophet's character was merciful without being naive. Islamic spirituality does not require the believer to offer unlimited access to people who repeatedly cause harm. You may forgive and still maintain distance. You may pray for someone while refusing to return to the same destructive pattern. You may release hatred without restoring a trust that has not been rebuilt. This balance protects the heart from two forms of aging: bitterness and repeated injury. Bitterness ages the heart by making the past continually present. Repeated injury ages the heart by teaching it that self-neglect is piety. Neither is required. The remembering heart asks, "What action brings me closer to justice, mercy, and truth?" Sometimes the answer is reconciliation. Sometimes it is a clear boundary. Sometimes it is silent. Sometimes it is seeking mediation or qualified help. Sometimes it is leaving. No single response fits every situation, and spiritual wisdom should not be reduced to slogans. The heart remains young through responsive faithfulness. It listens for what this moment requires, rather than repeating one reaction in every circumstance. Trials can also purify the relationship with hope. Before hardship, hope may mean expecting life to unfold according to desire. After hardship, hope becomes deeper. It is no longer the belief that nothing painful will happen. It becomes the trust that no pain can place you outside the care, knowledge, and mercy of Allah. This hope is stronger because it does not depend upon prediction. A child may feel safe only when they can see the parent. A mature trust can remain even when the path is dark, because it has learned from previous care. Look back carefully at your life. How many fears arrived but did not destroy you? How many nights seemed endless but eventually passed? How many doors closed and later revealed protection? How many times did help reach you through a person, idea, or strength you did not know would appear? This reflection is not meant to erase current pain. It is meant to remind the heart that its story contains evidence of being carried. Memory can age the heart when it repeats only injury. Memory can renew the heart when it also remembers mercy. This is why gratitude and remembrance are closely connected. Gratitude does not deny what was difficult. It refuses to let difficulty erase everything else. A spiritually mature person can say, "That season wounded me, and Allah also supported me through it. This relationship ended painfully, and I learned truths that now protect me. I lost something precious, and I discovered a dependence upon Allah I had never known before." These sentences hold complexity. They do not force pain into simple explanations. The heart becomes young when it can hold complexity without demanding that reality become easy. It can love someone and recognize that distance is necessary. It can grieve an ending and accept that the ending was needed. It can feel fear and still move according to faith. It can be disappointing without believing that Allah has disappointed it. This capacity is spacious. The young heart is spacious not because it has avoided suffering, but because suffering has not reduced its world to one wound. In the journey of the soul, every trial asks a hidden question. What will you make central now? Will the pain become central? Will the person who hurt you become central? Will the loss become central? Or will the trial become another place from which you return to Allah? The answer may change from day to day. Healing is not linear. Some mornings you may feel surrendered, and by evening the grief may return. Do not interpret the return of pain as the failure of faith. A wave returning does not mean the shore has disappeared. Continue returning. This is the secret of spiritual youth. Not that the heart never becomes tired, but that it knows how to be renewed. Every sincere prayer is renewal. Every honest tear is renewal. Every boundary established without hatred is renewal. Every moment in which you refuse to become what harmed you is renewal. Every act of forgiveness that releases your soul from obsession is renewal. Every time you choose not to spread the pain you received, the heart becomes younger. Trials can break the shell of false identity, but remembrance protects the light within. Yet the heart needs more than endurance. It was created for love, and without understanding the nature of love, remembrance can remain dry. The sixth lesson reveals why love of Allah is not an escape from human affection, but the source that protects affection from becoming possession. Love of Allah saves the heart from emotional decay. The sixth lesson asks us to look at love, because the heart often grows old through disappointed love more than through passing years. A person may survive financial loss, physical exhaustion, and difficult work, yet become inwardly aged by one relationship in which love was repeatedly given without being received, trust was broken, or loyalty was taken for granted. After such experiences, the heart may conclude that love itself is dangerous. It becomes careful, then distant, then emotionally numb. It learns to present calm while hiding hunger. It says, "I need no one." But beneath that statement may be the memory of needing someone who did not remain. This form of emotional decay is not always visible. A person may continue functioning successfully. They smile, speak, work, and fulfill responsibilities. Yet something within them has stopped expecting tenderness. The heart that remembers Allah can be healed from this conclusion. Not because divine remembrance replaces every human relationship, but because it restores love to its proper order. Human beings are created with needs for companionship, affection, family, friendship, and community. Islam does not teach that spirituality requires emotional isolation. Loving people is not a distraction from Allah when that love is carried with gratitude, responsibility, and truth. The danger begins when a created person is asked to perform the role of the Creator. No human being can know you completely, remain physically present forever, protect you from every pain, satisfy every need, or guarantee that you will never feel alone. Even the most sincere person has limitations. They become tired, misunderstand, change, and eventually return to Allah. When the heart demands perfection from human love, disappointment becomes inevitable. This does not excuse betrayal or neglect. A person remains responsible for how they treat others. Yet even within a healthy relationship, no human being can become the final resting place of the soul. The heart was created with a depth that no created form can completely fill. The contemplative wisdom associated with Ibn Arabi invites us to recognize that created beauty can become a sign pointing toward its source. When you love tenderness in another person, you are responding to a quality Allah allowed to appear through them. When you are moved by generosity, beauty, patience, or mercy, these qualities can awaken gratitude toward the one who gives every created thing its capacity. The mistake is not loving the sign. The mistake is forgetting what the sign points toward. A window is precious because it allows light to enter. If you begin worshipping the window, You have misunderstood its purpose. People are not objects, and this metaphor should not reduce them. It simply reminds us that the goodness we receive through another person is still a gift from Allah. The heart remains young when love becomes gratitude rather than ownership. It says, I am grateful that Allah allowed this person to accompany me. It does not say, because they accompany me, they belong to my control. It says, I will honor this relationship. It does not say, this relationship must never change form. It says, I will love sincerely. It does not say, my entire worth depends upon being loved in return. This kind of love is freer and more courageous because it is rooted in Allah. Many people believe detachment means caring less. In spiritual language, healthy detachment can mean caring without turning love into bondage. It means that you remain capable of love while your identity stays anchored in Allah. You can grieve someone's departure without concluding that your life has lost all meaning. You can experience rejection without believing you have become worthless. You can desire marriage or companionship without making your faith conditional upon receiving it. You can serve your family without making their approval the measurement of your sincerity. You can love your children while accepting that they are trusts who will grow into lives you cannot completely control. This balance keeps the heart alive. Possessiveness ages the heart because it lives in constant fear. It interprets freedom as threat. It cannot enjoy presence because it is obsessed with preventing absence. Love rooted in remembrance receives the present as a gift. It does not deny the possibility of loss, but it refuses to let future loss consume current gratitude. You are loved now, but fear keeps asking whether the love will remain. Because of what happened before, part of you watches every small change, a shorter message, a tired expression, or a day of distance becomes evidence that abandonment is beginning. This fear steals the very love it is trying to protect. You are physically with the person, but emotionally living in an imagined future where they have already left. Remembrance calls you back. It says, this moment belongs to Allah. Act truthfully within it. Do not punish the present for what the past did. This does not mean ignoring patterns. If someone behaves inconsistently or harmfully, pay attention. Spiritual trust is not blindness, yet distinguish between a pattern in reality and a story created by old fear. One way to distinguish them is to slow down before reacting. Ask, what facts do I have? What wound has been activated? What response protects both truth and dignity? Am I communicating clearly, or am I testing the person silently? Am I seeking reassurance, or am I demanding control? These questions allow remembrance to enter emotional life. Dhikr is not meant only for quiet rooms. It should transform how you speak when you feel rejected, how you listen when you feel defensive, and how you behave when love becomes uncertain. A heart that says Allah, but becomes unjust in conflict, has not yet allowed remembrance to reach its reactions. This is not a reason for despair. It is an invitation to deepen. The name of Allah should slowly soften the distance between worship and character. If Allah is our Rahman, the entirely merciful, then remembrance of Him should make you more merciful, though not without wisdom. If Allah is Al-Haq, the truth, then remembrance should make you more honest, even when honesty exposes your own mistakes. If Allah is Al-Halim, the forbearing, then remembrance should teach you to pause rather than immediately retaliate. The purpose is not to claim divine qualities as our own, but to allow awareness of Allah's names to shape the servant's conduct. This is how love of Allah renews the human heart. It frees love from ego. The ego says, love me because I need proof that I matter. The remembering heart says, I know my dependence upon Allah, so I can receive your love with gratitude rather than desperation. The ego says, you must heal every wound I carry. The remembering heart says, I will seek healing responsibly and will not demand that one person become my entire cure. The ego says, if you leave, I will become nothing. The remembering heart says, "Your departure may break my heart, but it cannot erase the one who created and sustains me." This is not emotional coldness. It is the strength that allows genuine tenderness. When people know they are not responsible for carrying your entire existence, love becomes lighter. When you stop expecting them to prove your worth every day, you can see them more clearly as human beings rather than sources of emotional survival. The heart also remains young by learning to receive love. Some people are excellent at giving, but deeply uncomfortable receiving. They serve, listen, and help. Yet when another person offers care, they withdraw. Receiving makes them feel